Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in Bears in the Kitchen, a presentation by UHS Nutrition Services. My name is Sarah Minko. I'm a dietitian at UHS, University Health Services, and I'll let Fiona introduce herself as well. She's my assistant today.
Hi, I'm Fiona. I'm a senior at Cal. I study MCB, and I'm a nutrition outreach worker, and Sarah is part of our nutrition team.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, just throw them in the chat. Fiona will answer them. And if not, you can also just shout out your questions as well. So today we're going to be making pizza. It's a pizza party. And I really, really love this recipe because I don't know if you've ever made pizza before, but it can sometimes, if you're making crust from scratch, it can take a really, really long time. Like a lot of recipes will call for you to wait 2 hours as the dough rises, but who has time for that? So I like this recipe because it's quick, it's adaptable, customizable to your dietary preferences and needs. I know in my family, we eat a lot of different things. Like we have one vegetarian, we have one person who's not eating dairy, we have one person who loves meat. So I love pizza because everyone can kind of have their own portion of the pizza that has the toppings that they like. This is also why I love it for entertaining. So if you're ever throwing a party in the future, if we're ever able to do that again, this is a great recipe because one, it's customizable. Again, people can make it exactly how they want. But two, you can make your guests cook their own food. So it's like, oh, we're having a pizza party. Everybody make their own pizza and you don't even have to cook. So that's like the best kind of entertaining. Okay, so let's get started. First, before you do anything, obviously when you cook, you wash your hands. So everyone take at least 20 seconds to go wash your hands with soap and water. Also pull back your hair. Either, with a hairband or headband like this. There's something worse than hair in a pizza. So pull back your hair and you might want to have like sleeves that are rolled up. You might want to remove any jewelry because we are going to be kneading the dough. So sometimes the dough can get sort of stuck in your rings. And you might want closed-toed shoes. That's the preferred method for cooking in case a knife falls or anything like that. So take a moment to prepare yourself and we'll meet back here in a second. First, what we're going to do, actually, I'll just walk you through the recipe in case you didn't get a chance to look at it. First, we're going to activate our yeast. And yeast is a live organism, but it needs to be activated. So we add some honey or other sugar, any kind of sweetener. And that's actually the food for the yeast. So that makes it kind of come alive as well as the warm water. So that's our first step. And then we sort of whisk it and let it sit for about 10 minutes. While we're doing that, we're going to start prepping our other parts of our pizza so that it's all ready to go once our yeast mixture is ready. So we might start making our sauce. And the sauce we're going to make from scratch as well. It's really simple. It's basically just like canned tomatoes and salt and pepper and olive oil and garlic. Then once the yeast mixture is ready, we will add in the flour and we'll start to knead it. So kneading is just a way of mixing it with your hands. You can also use a hand mixer like the one I have over there if you have a special kneading attachment. Most people don't, so we're just going to show you how to do it by hand.
I have a question, Sarah, in the chat. Is it possible to make pizza without yeast or maybe use another activating ingredient?
So if you're making the dough from scratch, you kind of need yeast because yeast is what leavens it. It's what makes it, sort of rise and get nice and fluffy. If you don't have yeast, or even if you use yeast that's like expired or it's somehow dead, your pizza crust is going to be thin and not really like yummy. So I would say if you don't have yeast, then try to just use like a different flatbread, like a pre-made bread, like focaccia or lavash bread or naan bread or tortilla. Or I've even made pizza just on like a slice of sourdough toast.
Okay.
But you can use any sort of bread like that if you don't have yeast.
All right. Just like building off of that, then if someone perhaps maybe wants to like watch their carb intake, is there another recommended flour that they should use aside from like wheat flour or?
There is pizza that is made on cauliflower crust. And I know Trader Joe's even sells like a pre-made cauliflower crust that would be lower in carb, but I will say not as delicious.
Okay.
So I would say just, for this time at least, enjoy your pizza with all the yummy carbs that it has, because carbs are actually good for us. So maybe you just want to try it this way this time.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right. So so we will make our sauce, and then we'll knead the dough, and then we will actually like pre-bake the crust so that it gets a little bit firm before we add toppings. So if we don't do that, it gets soggy. And nothing is worse than like soggy pizza crust. So we'll pre-bake it, and while it's baking, that's when we'll prepare our toppings. So we'll chop up all these beautiful veggies, whatever toppings you chose to put on your pizza, we'll prepare. And then we'll put it all together and then bake it for a little bit longer, and we'll have delicious pizza. All right. Any more questions before we get started?
I don't think so. Maybe they'll come up along the way.
Okay, cool. I'm going to just move this and get my yeast. So this is the yeast I'm using. Any kind of active yeast is fine, but you want to take your large mixing bowl. You can add the yeast right to the bowl. It calls for 1.5 tablespoons, which is about 2 of these packets. So just gonna pour it right in. So yeah, this is yeast. It's actually a microorganism that is alive. It's pretty cool. And through the fermentation process of it eating the sugars, it basically expels gases, which is what leavens the bread and makes all those nice air pockets to make the bread nice and chewy. Oh, I should also mention we should preheat our oven because we want it pretty hot for pizza. They make special ovens that are just for cooking pizza that are super, super hot. Most normal ovens don't get that hot. We're going to cook it at 450. So we want to preheat it now so that it's nice and hot when we're ready for it. Okay. So back to our yeast, we're going to add honey, which is the food for the yeast. So it is 1 teaspoon of honey, or other sugar, any kind of, just any kind of sweetener.
Is nutritional yeast acceptable to use, Sarah?
It is not. It is not the same kind of yeast, unfortunately. You could try it. If your bread doesn't rise, it's still going to be bread. It's just going to be like a little bit more like a cracker. So that's basically the difference between a cracker and a bread, is that the bread is leavened. It has risen, and a cracker hasn't. So it'll just be a little bit crunchier. But if that's what you have, just go for it. See what happens. Or you can use those other sort of flatbreads that we talked about. All right. So I've got my honey in there. And now we're going to add 1 cup of warm water. Ideally, you want your water between 105 and 115 degrees. So if you have a thermometer, a food thermometer, you can use that to test it. If you don't, just run your tap water on hot for a little bit till it's like as hot as it goes, and then get it in your cup. My tap comes out at 120 degrees. I know that because you can set it on your water heater. So I'm gonna draw it from the tap and then just let it sit for a second. I'll double check with this. The reason why you want it at the specific temperature is because the yeast is pretty particular in the temperature it likes. If it's too hot, it'll actually die. If it's too low, it won't activate. But again, this recipe is pretty forgiving. So if you don't have a thermometer, just do your best guess and it'll probably be okay. I will tell you that 110 degree water should feel pretty hot to the touch, but bearable. You won't want to like draw your finger away. It'll be like, ooh, that's hot, but it's okay. So I'm going to do that.
We have a question also, Sarah. I'm not sure if they want to use baking powder as a substitute to yeast, but just to verify, baking powder will help the dough rise. I know I've only used that in cookies, but
yeah, it sort of depends on what else is in. Like baking powder doesn't make something rise on its own. It's like a chemical reaction that needs other components. So I don't know if it would work. Fortunately, I don't know the answer to that. I think you could probably do a quick Google search to see if you can make pizza crust with baking soda. Did you say baking soda? Yeah, baking powder.
powder.
Baking powder. I really don't know the answers to that. Sorry. Yeah. So my water is pretty hot. I'm going to get 1 cup.
Can I ask how big the pizza is going to be? Should I preheat the big oven or will a toaster oven be fine?
So if you're going to do a toaster oven, you might need to, so we're going to make 2 like this size pizzas. So you could cook them 1 at a time.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I just got my water and I'm going to take the temperature. If you have a thermometer, great. If not, that's okay. So mine's at 113. So that's in between 105 and 110. That's exactly what we want. I'm going to pour it in and then whisk it together. So you'll see it will start to sort of foam up, which is exactly what we want it to do. And then when we let it sit, it'll foam up even more. And if you're following along right now, you should be smelling bread. So it smells very strongly of bread. That's the yeast activating. So really you just want to whisk it until all the honey is combined or other sweetener that you used. That looks good. And then we're going to set it aside, cover it. So like take a dish towel or saran wrap, cover it and set it aside so that it can sort of work its magic. I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes because that's how long we need to let it sit.
Sarah, can they use almond flour or any other nut flour?
Yes, you can. It'll be a different texture, but if that's the flour that you prefer, you can use that as well. Sometimes when you're buying alternative flours, look on the label to see what it's good for. It'll usually list it on there. So I know that if you're gluten-free, for example, you might want to use a bunch of different like non-glutinous flours. And a lot of times on the label, it'll say, this is great for muffins or bread or pizza. So look for the specific thing that you're trying to cook when you're buying those alternative flours. Okay, we're going to make our sauce. So get out like a small to medium sized bowl and your canned tomatoes. So ideally you would have gotten these like special Italian ones that are called like San Marzano, but really anything's fine. I've tested it with like just the Trader Joe's fire roasted normal Roma tomatoes that are crushed, and it tasted just as good. But yeah, so this is the kind of tomato you use. So open it up and you're going to do 1.5 cups, which is about 14 ounces. So if you have the smaller can, it's the whole can. For this one, it's going to be about half of the can. So 1.5 cups. This doesn't need to be exact because this is just your sauce. So if you have a little bit extra, that's okay. You just won't use it. When you're baking stuff like the crust, it's much more important to be exact with your measurements because baking is a science, right? It's chemistry. It's chemicals interacting, doing chemical reactions, and even a little bit off with measuring can throw the whole thing off. But when you're doing other things that aren't, baking, then you can be a little bit more liberal with your measuring. Okay, so we have the crushed tomatoes. If you happen to not have gotten the ones that look like this, that are already sort of crushed or pureed, you might need to blend it for a little bit. If like they're diced or if they're whole, you might need to blend it in a blender to make it this sort of consistency. All right, now we're going to chop some garlic. So it's 2 to 3 cloves. It's really just a personal choice of how much garlic you like. I saw some meme that says like you measure garlic by your heart, not what the recipe says. And I totally get down with that because I love garlic. So the easiest way to take off the peel, there's a couple different ways to do it. One, you can stick it in a mason jar and shake it and the peel just comes right off. Or you can take a chef's knife like this, put it on top and crush it. Make sure you're not hitting the sharp end of the blade with your hand and cutting it. And so it just peels off. Those are my 3 cloves I'm going to use. So for mincing garlic, mincing means the smallest possible cut you can make. The way I like to do it is take the garlic and make sort of long cuts without going all the way to the top so that they're all still holding on to the top, and then turning it and cutting it this way. All right, and then you get those nice minced pieces. And do that again. So you don't want big chunks of garlic in your sauce because then someone's gonna take a bite and have a big bite of garlic. I mean, certain people don't mind garlic as much as others, but really so that it's like spread out nice in the sauce, you want these pretty small. Alternatively, you can buy the pre-minced garlic. To be totally honest, that's what I normally do when I'm cooking because I'm always trying to find ways to save time. I don't really keep these little like greeny pieces. But I thought I would show you how to mince garlic in case you didn't know. But yeah, if you're looking for ways to save time, just buy the pre-made garlic or the pre-minced garlic. It will be a little bit more expensive. But time is money. You're busy students or staff members. So I usually just run my knife through it a couple more times to make sure that it's nice and minced, and then add it to the sauce. All right. So now we're also going to add some olive oil. It's about 1 teaspoon. If you just used your teaspoon for the honey, you can reuse it. It's okay to have a little bit of honey in your sauce. And you're going to cook it anyway, so there's no risk of cross-contamination. Or just wash it and reuse it, or just get a different teaspoon if you have 2 sets. Again, this measurement doesn't need to be exact. And then some salt and pepper. So I like to use fresh ground pepper. It's just a little bit fresher than ones that's already ground, but either is fine. So if you're doing it from this, it's a little bit hard to measure it. It calls for a 1/4 teaspoon, but that's about 15 turns. I measured it out. So. You should really be able to smell that if you're grinding it. Okay, and then we're going to add some salt. It's about 2 to 3 large pinches. So I already poured my salt into this. So 1, 2, 3. If you're trying to watch your salt intake because you have high blood pressure, maybe you do 2 pinches instead of 3. All right, then take a spoon and just mix it all together. I'm just looking at my timer and we have 1 minute and 30 seconds left until our yeast is ready. So that's pretty good time.
We have some questions about tomatoes, Sarah. Could you like talk more about tomato paste versus crushed tomatoes versus using fresh tomatoes altogether?
Sure.
And like maybe which is better for this recipe?
Yeah. So for this recipe, I think that the crushed or pureed tomatoes are the best. It gives the nicest consistency. You don't want your pizza sauce like super runny, right? Because then your pizza gets all watery. And you also don't want it super chunky because then it's like pieces of tomato instead of like a nice smooth sauce. So I feel like I like this consistency because it feels, I don't know, a little bit more like tomatoes. Like it's not completely smooth like tomato paste. Tomato paste is basically just tomatoes like super pureed and almost like concentrated without the juices. And this is literally just tomatoes crushed up or pureed. So I like this sort of texture on my homemade pizza because it feels a little more like organic or like natural, I guess. But you also can buy pre-made pizza sauce. It's super delicious and easy. So again, if you're looking for a way to save time, that's totally acceptable as well. Any other questions?
Not right now, but thanks.
So perfect timing. We're going to set our pizza sauce aside. We're going to come back to it. And we're going to attend now to our yeast mixture. So bring it back over. And look how much different it looks. So it's already started to sort of, balloon up. So now we're going to add the flour. I'm going to be using a mixture of half all-purpose flour and half whole wheat, or not exactly half, a little bit more of the all-purpose flour. I like to add the whole wheat flour because it adds a little bit of nutrition. So anytime you're eating a whole grain product versus a white flour product, you're going to be getting more nutrients like fiber and various micronutrients like vitamins and minerals. Also, I actually like the taste better. It's a little bit richer, but some people don't. Some people prefer the traditional pizza, which is made of like normal all-purpose flour. So do whatever you prefer, or if you're using alternative flours, that's cool too. So we're going to add the flour. It takes 2.5 cups total. So I'm going to do 1.5 cups of the all-purpose and 1 cup of the whole wheat. So one thing I've learned with making this pizza several times is it's better to actually take a spoon and like dip it into the flour and then put it in your measuring cup versus just throwing your measuring cup in. For one, just cleanliness. So making sure you're having like a clean spoon and you're not like contaminating your big sack of flour. But also sometimes when you scoop it like this, you are compressing the flour too much and you actually wind up getting more flour than you want. And if you have more flour than you want in your dough will be dry. So I'm just gonna spoon in. Sorry, you guys can't really see this. I'm just spooning in 1 cup. And then we're gonna use a knife to take off the excess. The back of a knife is nice and straight. Take off the excess. Just you go like this. And then sort of sprinkle that in, and you can start to mix that in a little bit. And then this calls for another half cup of that. So I'm gonna do it again. That's white flour. I'm gonna add the whole wheat flour. 1 more cup. It's already sort of starting to form a little bit of a dough. Great. Smells really good. Bread. So 1 more cup of the whole wheat flour. And then stir that in. Oh, and before we actually stir totally, we might want to add the salt and the olive oil. So it's 1 teaspoon salt. I need to wash my teaspoon now because I used it for the last one. Make sure it's dry too, otherwise the salt will stick to it. So I'm measuring a teaspoon, and then I'm gonna go like this to get it exact. Sprinkle that in, and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Right. So at this point, it's going to be a little bit hard to stir everything together. It's going to start being pretty dry. And that's good. We want it to be a dough. So you could also throw this in a mixer if you have like a hand mixer or stand mixer, and on the kneading setting. So first I like to just make sure that all the ingredients are in there. Like that. Okay, so now is when we're going to actually knead the dough. So I'm going to get out my cutting board. Okay, and I'm going to put a little bit more flour on the board so the dough doesn't stick to it. Sprinkle like that. And then you also kind of want to put it on your hands like that. And again, make sure your hands are super clean. And then I'm just going to grab the dough, scraping all the little pieces off. And we're going to start kneading it. So just sort of press it down. And kneading really just means mixing with your hands. So you fold it and you go like that. And then you turn it. Use the palm of your hand and the weight of your body to push the dough away from you. Fold it over and then turn it. So it doesn't have to be exact, but that's the main idea. If you're feeling like the dough is a little bit sticky, you might need a little bit more flour. So I'm just gonna put a little bit more flour like that. And we want to do this for like 3 minutes. So There's a lot of info online about making pizza dough that like you have to knead it exactly perfect, right amount of time. You don't want to over knead or under knead, or your dough is going to be too stretchy or too stretched out. Really the idea is you're activating the gluten. So gluten is a protein that's in wheat, and it's what makes pizza dough so yummy and chewy. And that's why if you have gluten-free pizza dough, it doesn't usually taste as good because it doesn't have that same texture. So that's what kneading does, is really just make sure the gluten is nice and stretched out the right amount. We don't want it too sticky because we need to be able to work with it. So again, if it's too sticky, keep adding flour. Mine is still sticking to this a lot. Yeah, so there's a lot of info online like, oh, don't over knead it, don't under knead it. I have experimented purposely like over and under kneading it, and I didn't see any difference, to be honest. So it's pizza, right? It's going to be good pretty much any way you make it. So don't worry too much. All right, I feel pretty confident that this is good. So you want to be able to press it and it kind of springs back. That means it's ready to go. So roll it into a ball. And put it back in the bowl. You can put a little olive oil in the bowl if you want, just to make sure it doesn't like start sticking again. And then we're going to cover it with a towel and put it in a warm, dry location to let it rise. So I'm going to put it right in my kitchen window because if you can see there's some sun coming in, and let it rise. So this step is a step that's really up to you based on how much time you have. If you have 2 hours to spare, great. Let your dough sit for 2 hours and really rise and get yummy and the flavors developed. If you have 5 minutes, that's fine too. So we're going to go on the shorter end today so that we can go through all the steps. All right, so now we can prepare our toppings and our pan. So maybe let's first prepare our pan so that it's ready to go so we can bake the crust. So I'm just using like a normal baking sheet. If you have a round pizza pan, that's cool, but you don't need it. And I'm using parchment paper. Parchment paper is great because it makes the surface non-stick. Because some of the recipes for pizza, you actually roll the dough out onto like a cutting board and then you transfer it. But to me, the dough always like starts breaking and it's way too hard to do that. So I like to just have this ready to go. And then I'm also going to spray it so that it's really non-stick. If you don't have spray, you can also just put some olive oil down and either brush it or use your fingers to move the oil around. So, okay, our pan is ready. I'm going to put that aside. And we can start prepping our toppings. So I'm choosing to do mushrooms, artichokes, and red onion on one pizza. And then I'm going to do tomato and basil on another pizza. I'm going to make one of my pizzas vegan because I have someone in my household who doesn't eat dairy. So I'm going to use a vegan cheese on one. And I'm going to use just like a fresh mozzarella on another. So I'd love to hear what kinds of toppings y'all are making, but just take this time on your own to prep whatever toppings you need to. Oh, I should set the timer for 5 minutes. In talking, so I'm going to set it for 4, and that's when our dough is going to be ready. Okay, so yeah, if you either put it in the chat or just yell it out what kinds of toppings y'all are putting on your pizza. And just so you know, like cut it in sort of bite-sized pieces. So, you know, whatever you would think would typically be on a pizza. I'm going to be using these artichoke hearts. They're a little bit big, so I'm going to cut them in half. I'm going to slice this onion into like long slices so you can see how I do that. I bought pre-sliced mushrooms, so that's one thing I don't have to cut. And then the tomatoes I'm going to be slicing, and I'm going to be chiffonading the basil, which I'll show you how to do that, but it basically means like rolling it and cutting it into ribbons. Oh, one point, if you are going to use basil, wash it now because you really don't want to cut wet basil. It gets like kind of like starts falling apart. So I'm going to wash it and dry it, and hopefully by the time I'm ready for it, it'll be dry. I also like to add my basil at the end of cooking. I don't like my basil cooked, but if you prefer it cooked, you can do it that way too. So I'm just squeezing it with a paper towel to get the water off. And then I'm going to wrap it again in a paper towel and let it sort of dry while I'm prepping my other ingredients. Yeah, in the meantime, let me know what ingredients you're using for your toppings. So for cutting an onion, I like to cut it in half and sort of leave the little end on because that helps you cut it. Remove any of the sort of debris. And I also take off, you know, 1 or 2 layers, whatever doesn't look good. I'm going to slice mine pretty thin. You don't want a big bite of onion. You go like that. You get these sort of pieces. Also, make sure whenever you're cutting, you're holding your knife properly. So you actually want to hold the blade and then wrap your other fingers around. And then your other hand should make the claw. So if you have your hands out like this, easier to chop your little fingers off. You want to have the claw like this. And you're kind of using the backs of your fingers to guide the knife. So you don't need a lot of onion on a pizza. That's probably enough. And I might just grab a plate and set this aside. Anyone sharing in the chat what they're putting on their pizza, Fiona?
We got some mushroom fans here.
Love mushroom.
Jalapeno and spinach.
Ooh. Okay. So for tomatoes, you really need a serrated knife. It's hard to cut through a tomato unless you have like a really fancy knife that's super sharp. I also like to add my tomatoes after cooking because I feel like they release a lot of water and make the pizza watery. Oh, you can also cut off that little portion. Same that on the plate over there. I do feel like I use 1,000 kneading boards in this recipe, so there is, you know, some dishes you have to do after, but you have some time to do your dishes while you're waiting for the crust to cook. So that was the dinger that our dough has sat for 5 minutes. So let's take a look at it. And look at that. It's bigger than it was before, so it's risen. That's awesome. So this is where we can actually start working with shaping our dough. So take the dough and basically just, first I'm going to cut it in half because I'm making 2 medium-sized pizzas. If you want 1 large pizza, you can just do it like that. I find it's a little bit harder to manage the dough And I like to have 2 different types of pizzas for my household. Like I mentioned, we have dietary restrictions. So I cut it in half. Take one piece. And this is where you start shaping the dough. So you can go like this with your hands and just sort of go around and let gravity pull the dough down. You also can put this on a board and roll it out if you would prefer a more even circle or shape. I kind of like the organic shape of it being not a perfect circle. And you got to do it quick because you don't want to tear. So I feel like that's about ready. Oh, my dog's coming to say hi. That's Remy in the background. You can see. So now you just sort of push it out, make the crust portion a little bit higher than the middle portion. I kind of actually like to make sort of like squarish pizzas. I don't know. That's just my vibe. But you can make any shape you want. You can make a heart if you're on a date. You can make it egg for Easter. That'd be actually kind of cute. You could use like bell peppers or like onions to like decorate the egg, like an Easter egg. You can spell out someone's name, whatever you want. So there's one. We're gonna do the same thing with the other one. You want to leave a little space in between because it will expand a little bit when it cooks. Not like crazy amounts like how cookies do. I feel like I always make cookies like conjoined twins. They like always start to run into each other. But this will expand a little bit, but it's okay. All right, so there's your 2 pies. Mine actually feel super oily because I added that oil into the bowl. But I might add a little bit more oil just to make sure that it cooks really nice. If yours don't feel super oily, add some more. And then take your pastry brush. If you picked up ingredients from the Basic Knead Center from the food pantry, hopefully you got a pastry brush. We tried to add these to everyone's bag as a little gift. If you don't have that, you can just use your fingers or a towel, whatever, to spread it around. All right, so these are ready to cook. So we're going to put these in the oven for about 5 to 6 minutes. I'm just going to do 5 and check it and see if we need to do more. I'm going to wash my hands because they're super oily. And then we'll continue to prep our toppings. So we pre-bake the crust so that it's not like mushy. If you don't do this step, the crust is sort of underdone and a little bit not nice texture, a little mushy. All right, so I'm gonna cut my cheese. Again, I'm using this sort of like fresh mozzarella. Sometimes it comes pre-sliced, which is nice, except I find the slices are a little bit thick. I also like the balled mozzarella. Those make really nice pizzas, or just the shredded, typical shredded mozzarella is great too. If it does come in water, packed in water, you're going to want to pat it dry. You don't want any water while you're baking the pizza because it's going to run on the pizza top, make it all watery. So that's why I don't like the tomatoes on top. They release too much water.
Sarah, we would like a demo of you like tossing the dough the way they do in like movies and restaurants. So.
Darn, I should have done that. That would have been awesome. I actually practiced that to see if I could do it. I would love to see you do it. I already put mine in the oven, so I can't.
I definitely probably tried that as a kid and then
It's
like
really
licked it everywhere.
It's really, really fun. I would highly suggest doing it, especially if you're having a pizza party, making your guests do it.
Mhm.
Okay, so I cut my cheese. I'm also going to put this aside. And I need to cut my artichokes. We can use the same cutting board because, again, this is all stuff that's going to be cooked. You never want to share cutting boards if you're like cooking meat and then creating like a salad with fresh vegetables. You wouldn't want to share the same cutting board with the raw meat and the veggies because the bacteria, the pathogens from the meat could get on the fresh salad. But when you're cooking something, you're likely going to cook away those bad things. Also, these are relatively safe ingredients. We don't have any meat here, raw meat. So there's my artichokes. I love artichokes. They're so delicious. And that's probably enough. And right. And what else do I have? Oh, my basil. So if you were doing this as like a party for friends, I would say get all your toppings like prepped and put them in little bowls. And so people can just like choose what toppings they want and add them, and they don't have to like prep them themselves. So for basil, I'm just going to take, I already dried it. So I'm going to take like 3. Oh, I don't need 3. Yeah, maybe. I like a lot of basil. Do like 3 big leaves. And I like to just sort of stack them like this. So they're stacked. And then roll them up. Actually, you know, I have a little bit of water on my board from the artichokes. Don't want that. And roll it up like a taco, or I guess that would be a burrito. You don't really want the end pieces. I mean, they're totally fine to eat. Just a little bit weird texture. And then you chop it. Like little ribbons. Yeah, once you like undo it, that's chiffonading. It's a super fancy French word for cutting ribbons of herbs. Okay, so there's my pizza toppings. Look how pretty that looks. I love all the colors. All those different colors mean lots of different nutrients, lots of different antioxidants. So pizza actually has a lot of nutrients. We have, the whole grain crust, which has fiber and other micronutrients. We have the tomato sauce, which has lots of benefits. Let's check our crust before I go on it longer. So get it. Keypad, check your crust. So this is what mine looks like right now. I think it needs 1 more minute. It's not super firm. You want it firm, but not so I'm gonna do 1 more minute. So what I was saying, yeah, tomatoes have vitamin C and lots of antioxidants. So when you're eating pizza, you're actually getting a lot of tomatoes from the sauce, unless you're using pesto, which has other nutrients as well. But then you can top it with veggies and get even more nutrients. So pizza actually is somewhat nutrient dense. I feel like it gets a bad rap for being like a comfort food, but I also just wanted to talk about how comfort food is okay. We all sort of emotionally eat once in a while. Food is something that brings people joy, and that's okay. The problem really arises when we're turning to food as our only coping mechanism, like we turn to food every single time we're stressed or bored or sad or whatever. We want to have other sort of tools in our toolkit of how to deal with stress. But once in a while, using food to sort of soothe yourself is totally fine because it does have a huge emotional aspect to it. So yeah, just make sure you're enjoying it. That's really the important part. If you're eating food for comfort and it's not providing the comfort, it's actually making you stressed, well, that's not really helping you at all. All right, so my crust, I think, is ready. I'm gonna bring it over. Put on some wax. There we go. Look how pretty. And we can put our sauce on. So be really careful because this pan is hot. But I see now the time is 5:02. So if you have to go, I'm sorry that we went over. Really, it's pretty self-explanatory from here. You put the sauce on, the cheese, your topping, and you bake it till it's nice and melted. So it's probably about 6 to 7 minutes. So you have to go. I hope you enjoyed this. If you can stick around, I'll show you a little bit more. So some people like a lot of sauce. Some people don't like too much sauce. Just do whatever you feel in your heart. Pizza, again, is pretty forgiving. Most people like pizza, so they're not going to notice if your crust is a little over kneaded or under kneaded or it's a little too saucy. Just so delicious. All right. Put on my mozzarella on one, and I'll put on vegan cheese on the other. I just got the like almond milk cheese from Trader Joe's, like this. It melts, which is great. It tastes fine. It doesn't taste as good as mozzarella, but that's okay. Anyone have, input on comfort foods that they love that like really make them feel good and bring them joy when they're stressed or sad or missing home?
I think oatmeal is comforting.
Oatmeal. It's nice and warm. I love it on cold mornings. Oh, I wasn't going to put the basil on until after. That's okay. I'll put a little bit on. Put some more on it. So you can get super creative with pizza, right? Like there's some really unique combinations. When I was in Nicaragua, of all places, we had a pizza that was pepperoni, pineapple, and jalapeno. And it was really good. Sort of that sweet, savory, spicy thing going on. But some people just hate pineapple on pizza. I'll put onions on this one for color. Again, do whatever sounds good to you. All right, that looks good to me. I'm going to put it back in the oven. Oh, also crushed red pepper is really good on pizza. You can put it on before you bake or after. So this is going to be 6 to 7 minutes. Set your timer for 6 and check it. And then come back to it. So yeah, now we just wait. What I usually do at this point is start cleaning up my kitchen because I don't know if you can see, but it's a mess. So I take this time to clean up. I also might take this time to make a salad if that's what I'm doing. If I'm going to serve, a salad with a pizza, this would be a great time to do it. But yeah, I'm here just to answer any questions that you may have. We can continue discussing comfort foods, but I'm just going to start cleaning up. So shout out any questions you may have, or if you have to go, that's fine as well. If you want to stick around to see how my pieces turned out, you can do that too. But if you're going to leave, thank you for joining us. Yummy. So it is super hot right now, so I would advise to not eat it yet, but that's great because then you can prep your salad or do whatever else you need to do to get ready to eat. But take a look at that. Pretty yummy. Cool. Well, that's our lesson for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, send me an email, fill out our eval. We greatly appreciate it. So thank you so much.